and pressure. 45-year-old Nitin Nabin formally takes over as the new president of the BJP, the youngest person to hold the post in history. The Prime Minister hails his millennial boss. Nabin sets eyes on Tamil Nadu and Kerala polls coming up in the next few weeks. No relief for actor Vijay yet as Madras High Court reserves order on his much-awaited film Jananayagan. The filmmakers are fighting the censor board in court. The Adani Group has signed MOUs with the Maharashtra government for projects worth 6 lakh crore rupees. The deal spans data centers, urban infra, renewable energy, semiconductors, and arena development. The announcement comes on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum, where NDTV has the largest team in Davos. And US President Trump doubles down on his Greenland claim before leaving for Davos, says he will tell European leaders we have to have it. Also shares a series of provocative pictures and messages, even attacks his closest ally, the United Kingdom. But on the show tonight on India Matters, Yuvraj Mehta, the young techie who drowned pathetically, terribly in a ditch filled with water just a few kilometers from where I am bringing this show to you live, was not just an accidental death, viewer. It was murder, and not just murder by negligence. And I will prove it to you tonight on a show where I am going to name and shame people no other network has the spine or the guts to do, because they are scared of the backlash from the system. Not us here on NDTV. We'll be taking names you've heard nowhere before. At 8:30, Davos in Switzerland is readying for a Trump quake. NDTV's senior team is right there where Trump is going to be landing, and I'm going to tell you why another quake is expected. Let's get started with our lead story tonight. Let's be brutally honest right at the top tonight, my friends. Yuvraj Mehta wasn't a millionaire's son. He wasn't a rich kid speeding in a Porsche, a BMW, or a Lamborghini. If he were, the response on Saturday night in Noida, very close to where I am bringing this show to you from, would have looked very different, and you know it. You wouldn't have seen officials standing on the bank shivering cluelessly. You would probably have seen searchlights piercing the fog, helicopters hovering over that water-filled pit, and a rescue mission moving heaven and earth to save a high-profile life. But Yuvraj was a techie, a middle-class techie in a Maruti car, a middle-class man driving a middle-class SUV, and in the eyes of our apathetic system, that meant his life wasn't worth the discomfort of cold water. He was left to drown in the dark, because in India, the urgency of your rescue is dictated in some ways by the badge on your bonnet or how much money you have in your bank account. But I'm here to tell you this was not an accident. And I'm not making an emotional argument, viewer. I am not riding on outrage. I'm going to give you facts that nobody else will tonight. This was cold-blooded murder committed by an apathetic, corrupt, and incompetent system. Let me list evidence of their guilt on your screen right off the bat without wasting your time. This tragedy was written in the files years ago. Warning number 1 was back in 2023. An NDTV special investigation team has accessed a formal letter that was sent by the UP Irrigation Department to the Noida Authority, where they said, there is this pit, it's a death trap, we need a regulator to divert the water. The letter didn't trigger action in 2023. It simply gathered dust. They bickered for 3 years over who should pay for this regulator, while the pit slowly turned into the death trap that it is. Warning number 2 was just 15 days ago, on January the 2nd, when a truck plunged into this exact same water-filled pit. Can you believe it, viewer? The same pit, another truck had already crashed into it. The driver in that particular case, unlike young Yuvraj, was fortunate to have been saved by pure luck. But even that didn't wake up the administration. What did the officials do 2 weeks ago? Nothing. They slept for 2 weeks while Yuvraj began his final 2 weeks on earth. And when the car finally went in, the very people paid for by your taxes to save lives are disaster response forces, who I acknowledge have a difficult and dangerous job. They just stayed on the bank. And why? Because the water was too cold. In any other profession, that is cowardice and dereliction of duty, because your job is literally to save lives. In our bureaucracy, it's just another Saturday night. We know how this ends, don't we? A big show is made of the Noida Authority CEO being shunted. You can bet he'll be back once media attention evaporates. A few junior clerks will be thrown under the bus. Perhaps some big bosses will get sent on leave. I cannot promise anything myself, but hopefully this time I actually can. You, the viewer, have flooded my inbox over the last 48 hours saying, Shiv, take this up because no one else will. I hear you, and that's why tonight we declare a fight for justice for Yuvraj Mehta. At NDTV, we are staying on this story. That is my promise. We will ensure that heads roll appropriately. We will ensure accountability is fixed, because the price of a middle-class life simply cannot be zero. Now I want to show you just a little bit about the warnings that I alluded to in my opening, because the specifics are where the nightmare really lie. Here is proof for the first time on television since this tragedy occurred that officials simply slept. They murderously ignored the possibility of solving this issue and making sure that nobody actually paid with their lives, but they did not. Yuvraj would have been alive today only if officials acted on the warnings that I'm about to show you. 2 warnings were ignored. The Noida Techie therefore paid with his life. Warning number 1 was in 2023. An official letter flagged the need to install a water regulator at the pit. The irrigation department of the UP government under Yogi Adityanath wrote a letter to the Noida Authority saying, we need this. They wrote to the Noida Authority specifically pointing out this very pit where young Yuvraj finally lost his life and said, this is a tragedy waiting to happen. It was a warning letter that sadly gathered dust. It was lost in the files and the officials simply forgot about it. But this was 2 years ago in 2023. It happened 15 days ago on the 2nd of January, like I said, a truck, a separate truck, fell into the very same pit where this young techie lost his life, viewer. The truck fell into that same pit, but in that case, the driver, by some stroke of miraculous luck, he was saved. He could have drowned himself, but he was saved. No action by officials after the truck accident. They had a letter, they had a close call, an accident, and still they did not solve the situation and stop it from becoming a death trap for Yuvraj just 15 days later. That's why on the 17th of January, on Saturday, Yuvraj's car fell into that pit and he died. Officials didn't act for 15 days. And the techie, that is Yuvraj Mehta, lost his life. And now I want to do something that no other network has the guts, the spine, or the gumption to do. And that is to call out, to name and shame the officials who we believe hold accountability or are answerable at one level or the other. The builder, number 1, the MJ Wishtown Planner Limited. Now the chairman of the builder has been arrested. The water-filled pit was on their plot, ignored safety norms despite being fully aware of them. The owner has been arrested once again thanks to NDTV's non-stop coverage. Number 2 in this hall of blame, M. Lokesh, the Noida Authority CEO, failed to act on the 2 warnings that NDTV has dug up and shown you as part of our investigation. The 23rd January letter on the pit, January 2nd accident, no action by the Noida CEO. He has been removed and sent on leave after Yuvraj's death. He's not been sacked, he's only been sent on leave, probably until the media heat evaporates, but it will not evaporate here at NDTV. Then comes the State Disaster Response Force, the men who reached the site very, very late, too late. They refused to get into the water-filled pit to save young Yuvraj because they said the water was too cold. The men didn't have the required equipment for the rescue. How pathetic and embarrassing that the State Disaster Response Force, despite being there, being in a position to save him, did not get into the water to save him. Shame on them. Manisha Singh, the DCP traffic in Noida, she is answerable as well because she failed to ensure the presence of reflectors, warning signs at the pit, and therefore anyone driving in the dark always ran the risk of hitting that wall and falling into the ditch just as Yuvraj did. The UP Irrigation Department may have issued a letter warning in 2023, but under the Yogi Adityanath government, they are answerable for the death of Yuvraj as well, because the delay in constructing the regulator at the pond, even despite a face-off and bickering with the Noida authority, should have put the onus on the government of the day to ensure that it did not become a death trap. It did not become something that was ignored and endanger the lives of people. Medha Rupam is the district magistrate of Gautam Budh Nagar, which is Noida. 4 days later, no action, no response. Only after 4 days did she actually go to the site, and I will show you in a while how she refused to take any of the questions that NDTV's reporters alone had the spine to ask her. Then comes Lakshmi Singh, the police commissioner of Gautam Budh Nagar. Saad Mia Khan is the DCP of Greater Noida. The incident was first reported to the police. What did the police do to help the victim is a question that nobody seems to have an answer to. The GM of the Noida traffic cell, why were there no signs near this pit despite multiple warnings? Literally an accident 15 days ago, and yet nobody did anything. Do I need to give you more layers of information? Viewer, do I need to take more names? Do I need to give you more evidence in the form of letters, warnings, documents to prove to you that this was homicide, this was murder, this was not an accident that has taken away the life of young Yuvraj Mehta? And we will continue to ask those big questions, just like NDTV's Tejashree Purandare did when she confronted the Noida DM Medha Rupam, who visited the accident site 4 days after Yuvraj lost his life. Take a look. Didn't answer a single question.
Well, let us also speak to Noida DM Medha Rupam, who is over here. Medha ji, what you have to say on this entire matter? DDMA is the first respondent. Why the team was not present on the spot? Not present on the spot. Medha ji, the people want to know that what has happened. Today's done, you are there. Don't touch me like this. Don't touch me like this, please. You need to answer the questions now. क्या कहना चाहेंगे आप? मेधा जी, अशोक जी यहाँ आइए. यहाँ आइए, हटिए. What would you want to say? You are the DDMA was the first respondent. Why you were not present? Medha ji, you are the GM of Noida. What would you like to say? What would you like to say on this? The DDMA is the first respondent. On your screens, let us also go from that side. Why no action is being taken? Was Noida not saying anything? Why did the security is the first respondent? We are just asking questions, nothing else. Why asking questions as to what they have to say? You cannot stop us like this from asking the questions. क्या कहना चाहेंगे? यहाँ पे पानी भरा हुआ है पूरा. आप चुप क्यों हैं? मेधा जी, जवाब दीजिए मेधा जी. आप सवालों से क्यों भाग रही हैं? Medha, people want to know that what has actually happened. You being the first responding DDMA, why DDMA was not there? Why? What you have to say on this? So Noida DM, why was not any preparation? दीजिए, आप 4 दिन बाद पद पर आइए. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि जवाब नहीं देंगे.
All of the information that you've just seen, the video clip you just saw of NDTV's brave young reporter from our team questioning the Noida DM, is something that you will not see on any other network, because everyone has an axe to grind. Everyone is afraid of the system. Everyone is afraid of asking questions of the system because they believe that there will be a backlash. Those are the people who don't care about what happens to the family of young Yuvraj Mehta. But here at NDTV, when we take up a story like you have asked me to do, viewer, we take it very, very seriously. We consider it our sacred duty to get to the truth. I've shown you 2 documents today. Let me introduce you to the incredible, brave, young team of reporters who've been digging into this story. Suhail Seth also joins me because his perspective is valuable to us. Suhail, I want to go to our reporters first, and then I'm going to come to you because I want you to hear firsthand what they've seen on the ground, because this is truly horrifying. Tejashree Purandare was at the site. She's the one who confronted the Noida DM on lack of accountability. Rahesha Sehgal's been broadcasting live from there. She's been looking at that location firsthand before anyone else had the thought to even venture out of their air-conditioned newsrooms and head to the site. Bismi Taskin Islam, our assistant editor, has been looking at accountability, which is something that gets forgotten so easily as we get lost in the details. Tejashree, very quickly want to come to you first because you were there tonight when that car was being pulled out a whole 4 days after the tragedy. You also confronted the Noida DM. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to answer any questions, Tejashree.
Well, absolutely, and they are just shifting the accountability from one officer or one department to another. And I would just slightly like to pan my camera and show you the visuals that how dark it is over here at the point of time when we are reporting right now. And imagine what the condition must have been. Noida is a city that sells itself for smart living, but this smart city failed to save a life of 27-year-old young individual who was there till his very last breath, struggled for around 2 hours, but the teams were standing over here. The State Disaster Response Force, apart from that, the firefighting team, the UP police, they all were standing over here. More than 100 people were gathered, but none of them was able to save Yuvraj Mehta, who lost his life. His father said that I was feeling helpless. I was feeling first time helpless in my life. He tried to, in fact, stop all the people, the passengers who were passing through this road. I would just like to give you a glimpse of this road as well. You see, these barricadings are being placed over here. Now, the question over here is that why the administration, who is waking up after the accident, who has come into the action after the accident.
The best part is, Tejashree, I take what you're saying very seriously because if you were not there reporting for the last 72 hours, I doubt you would have seen officials even go to the site today. That is something I clearly believe. Suhail, do you think any heads will roll? You know, the NDTV's reporters have dug out evidence that this death trap was a well-known death trap 2 years ago and even 15 days ago, Suhail.
So first, let me congratulate you, Shiv, and I mean this sincerely. I'm glad that you're doing this. And you're not doing it for the citizens of India. You're doing it for every family that grieves at an unnatural loss because we don't value human life. We have no regard for accountability. We have a bunch of jokers governing the country in most parts, and there is no administrative accountability whatsoever. People are being electrocuted because of floodwaters. People are being killed because of, sewage issues. People are dying of water poisoning. I mean, what the hell is going on? You tell me, we keep talking, and rightly so. And here I must say the Prime Minister is working hard to make sure that brand India continues to triumph everywhere. And yet these basic things are missing. Now, I have to say, Yogi Adityanath did a wise thing by sacking the Noida CEO. It shouldn't end there.
Yeah.
Do what the Chinese do. If he is found at fault, he or she, whoever it is, they should be prosecuted and they should be put behind bars. The problem, Shiv, is that these guys get away with a mere transfer. You're transferring ineptness, inaptitude, complacency, apathy from one dish to another. You're not teaching demonstrable lessons to people who blatantly violate every norm of governance. You tell me, we keep talking about, India is going to be Viksit Bharat 2047. We're building these expressways. We're building these roads. Damn good. But are we valuing the lives of average Indians? And I love what you said. You know what normally gets the headlines? A BMW or a Porsche or a Mercedes. What doesn't get the headlines is when the average Indian is deprived of a life of dignity, decency, and safety. That is the problem.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
until we ensure this, my advice to you, and not that you need it, my advice to you, Shiv, would be to continue like you did with the Pune issue, continue to badger these people. My only worry is that we are now creating a society that is shameless when
Yeah,
it comes to governance. I've been, as you know, running a single man campaign on Gurugram. They don't
yeah,
care.
yes.
They just don't care because the voting is completely opposite to development. And that is my worry.
No,
So
that is a,
I love what you're saying, but continue and persevere until heads don't only roll,
yeah.
but heads are put behind bars because that's where these chaps
I
belong.
completely agree with you, and I would like to personally say I promise that here on NDTV we will not be letting go of this story, even though others are being asked to move on and cover other stuff. Bismi, for instance, one of our newest members of our team, and I want to come to her very quickly for an answer. Bismi, the Hall of Blame is something that NDTV is putting out. Nobody else is putting out right now. We've named people that other people are very hesitant to name at this point of time because of accountability. Bismi.
Absolutely right, Shiv. We in fact came down with this huge list of people who because of whom this case, this 27-year-old techie lost his life. This is nothing, Shiv, but a blatant show of apathy. We have CEO Lokesh M. Now, what I would like to point out, Shiv, is when the letter by the UP Irrigation Department was written, it was Mr. Lokesh who was on duty because he had joined as the CEO mid last year. And this letter is from September last year.
Yeah.
Now, to bring another point, even Wishtown, in an apparent letter, had also flagged to the Noida authorities that there is sewage coming into this particular plot, and we need to do something about it. So it is not one shift, but there were multiple warnings that were given before we lost this young life. And this young life has been lost because of people like Mr. Lokesh M., the Noida authorities, junior engineers there, the real estate developers, the emergency response teams, and of course the Noida police.
Yeah. Rahesha was the first television news anchor to reach the spot and actually do a live show from there. And I notice, not that I'm paying attention, I noticed that all other channels have finally sent their people there, after being practically shamed by NDTV into getting people on the ground to report and broadcast from there. Rahesha, our coverage has directly resulted in some action being taken. I'm wondering if the car would have even been fished out if it wasn't for our coverage yesterday and today.
Right, absolutely, Shiv. Of course, there was the NDTV Big Impact, out of which the Noida CEO was put on waitlist. But when I was there on ground, we were the first channels to be there on ground zero. What I saw was that the construction site, the 30-foot water pitfall, was right in the middle of a residential area. There were high-rise buildings there, but despite multiple warnings, there were no barricades, no reflectors, and no street lights as well. Because our coverage yesterday, when I was standing, was a sharp 90-degree turn, which perhaps Yuvraj Mehta missed. And anybody driving late at night without any reflectors, without any warnings, could have missed that turn. There are questions now being raised. Is it civic apathy or criminal negligence, which we have been talking about here on NDTV in our continuous coverage?
Okay. I promise once again that this will be our priority story. Thank you all for being with me on this special segment. NDTV will continue to make this our #1 priority story. But I'm going to take you straight live now to the World Economic Forum in Davos, where Rahul Kanwal, our CEO and editor-in-chief, is joined live by IBM Global CEO Arvind Krishna and India's IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav. It's a big exclusive in Davos.
Hello and a warm welcome. The magic of the World Economic Forum at Davos is that you can bring together people and conversations which would otherwise be impossible. And you're about to witness a peak Davos moment, because live here at the NDTV studios in Davos, I am delighted and privileged to be joined by one of the world's leading technologists, chairperson and chief executive officer of IBM, somebody with very proud and strong Indian origins, Arvind Krishna. Thank you so much for joining us. And with us is somebody our viewers on the NDTV know very well, but also somebody who went to the same IIT, Kanpur. So both these are Kanpuria boys from IIT. So a lot for the IIT Kanpur circle to be chatting about as well. I'm joined by Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, who's leading the Indian delegation at the World Economic Forum, Minister for IT, Information Technology, Information and Broadcasting and Railways. Thank you very much for joining us. Fantastic to have both of you. This is the one conversation I've most been looking forward to. I want to start by asking you, Mr. Krishna, about your view on what Ashwini Vaishnav and the Indian government are doing at this moment in terms of trying to build up an AI ecosystem. We are in the AI age. We've seen all the tech developments being done by the tech giants in the United States, IBM amongst them. We're seeing low-cost, high innovative value systems coming out of China. Where do you see India shape up in this global AI race from your lens?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. So first, it's a privilege to be here with you and with Ashwini ji. So let's talk about this. These are conversations I've been having with him, I think, for almost 3 years now. It actually comes down to the word independence or sovereignty. I think you would call it Viksit Bharat. When something is so important that is going to be used for the next many decades, it could be incredibly expensive, or perhaps it's not in your control. If you get it from outside, then you must have capability within the country. And that's what I've always encouraged Ashwini ji to invest in for India, whether it's in the public sector or whether it's incenting the private sector. It doesn't have to be everything, because I believe that small models are catching up to the capability of large models for perhaps 95% of all that you do. So how do you encourage that ecosystem, be it the underlying semiconductors, be it the model building, and actually most importantly, which the world doesn't worry about yet, the usage applications, which is where I think the breakthrough will come for India locally.
So the big concern in India, amongst many who are watching, is that we produce so many technologies, IT, techies, chief executives like yourself, running the world's biggest companies. We don't produce a DeepSeek. Why is it? Okay, so we understand what's happening in Silicon Valley, but why is it that when that breakthrough cutting edge innovation happened, it came from China and not from India? And what do we need to do now to try and ensure that the next DeepSeek moment comes out of India?
Putting aside a huge amount of pride, which one should have, there is a 20-year lag. It's purely, I believe it is fundamentally a question of only two things. Economics, meaning how much capital can you put at risk? Because doing things like DeepSeek means 9 out of 10 fail. In the Indian ecosystem, 90% failure is still not smiled upon. Some failure is smiled upon, but not 90%. So there is the economics, coupled with the risk-taking appetite of people to go ahead and do that. Now, going from $1 trillion GDP to 3 to 5, that unlocks a lot more. What it unlocks is, if you kind of take how much is left, at 5 trillion, perhaps almost $1 trillion can be applied towards all this. When you're at 1 trillion, you have zero. So this is just that question. So that's why more of it will happen now. And as the next 2-3 years unfold, I believe even more of that will happen. So those are really important considerations.
In the last few years, you've made an effort to try and build out an ecosystem, A, around semiconductors, B, around ensuring that we have enough compute power for Indian companies to be working on. How confident are you at this moment that even if DeepSeek didn't happen in India, that India won't be left behind in this AI race, that it won't just be the American models going up against the Chinese models and the world having to pick between them, that India will be a third pillar in this race?
So many people today in Davos, they say that it's going to be a T3 world. So technology, 3 big technology countries in the world. And I'll pick up from where Arvind said, 95% of the work today is done by small models. And the 12 models that we are building, they are in the range of 50 billion to 120 billion parameters. A 50 billion parameter model can run the AI needs of every enterprise in the world. So, we have to look at the entire AI ecosystem, the topmost layer, the usage, the applications. That layer is where the maximum ROI is going to be. Return on investment उसी में से आएगा और बहुत ज़रूरी है कि AI application की दुनिया में India lead ले. We have been a very good IT services industry in our country. What matters is how do we quickly understand the enterprise way of working understand the technology and apply that technology in the enterprise. And that's where our IT companies are doing so well today. They have all pivoted. Their AI hiring has increased 33%. Second is the model. I said we are building 12 models, and very soon we'll be launching 3 or 4 of them very soon. Third, the chip model, the semiconductor layer. Our semiconductor program has progressed very well, and today in our country we have 10 plants in which construction is going on. 3 plants pilot production has started. 4 plants will be completing their pilot production and commercial production in 2026. Then comes the infra layer. $70 billion worth investment is going in infra layer. Then comes the energy layer. In the energy layer, we have opened up the nuclear energy to the private sector through the Shanti Act, and that's where this entire stack of AI is going to have a major play in our country.
Let's deconstruct this one by one, right? For example, the application layer. Now, one critique can be that this is, of course, the use case, but this is where the Indian companies always restrict them. They're not doing fundamental core research and innovative breakthrough, which is happening typically out of a Silicon Valley or in some cases out of China. Do you think that criticism is fair? And if it is fair, why does it not happen?
It's actually not fair.
Not fair.
Because unfortunately, the majority of the work in India has historically been not actually in creating new applications, but in maintaining and evolving them. So actually, if you construct the new applications, there is a lot of innovation, because then you have to deeply understand the enterprise and you have to deeply understand the AI itself. So that's why I actually think that that criticism is not fair. The value, every tech evolution, not just AI, it starts at the infrastructure and semiconductor layer, typically lasts 2 to 5 years, then moves into what we would call the middle enabling layer. In this case, it is models. That is always unique. In the case of PCs, it was operating systems. iPhone and Android was also operating systems. And then you get to the applications. In all cases, in less than 10 years, 90% of the value shifts to the innovative applications, not the maintained ones. And so that is what Ashwini ji is talking about. And if you take advantage of that, it'll unlock a huge boom of innovation and monetary returns.
Let's now come to large language models, because there are 2 ways of looking at it. One theory is that LLMs get commoditized and there's no point in countries like India spending a lot of compute power, time, energy and effort in building it. You can build on other models that have been built. The other is very core to the idea of data sovereignty and AI sovereignty, that you can't depend on the Americans or the Chinese. You have to build this out yourself. What have you been, how do you come out on this one?
I've been very public on this. And that is not just my words, that is the actions of our company and what we recommend to our clients. I believe that the very large LLMs, because even 50 billion and 100 billion is a LLM 2 years ago. But the trillion parameter LLMs, I actually believe will be a commodity. A commodity can have value, but a commodity means there is no switching cost between them, which means price comes down to whatever is the minimum bearable. And the reason is the amount of investment. Those are going to cost you $50, $100 billion a year to get built. And if that's the ongoing investment, you can look at the economics and say maybe there'll be a half dozen people who will supply them. But if switching cost is low, which is what we observed, price comes down. The models then that can be infused with national data, with Indian local health data, with defense data, with how work is done in the Indian legal system, those can be much smaller and incredibly effective for that purpose. If those can be built in India, 95% of the work will be done there, and it's fine. For the other 5%, use a big one.
Minister Vaishnav, very closely with the Indian companies building out these LLMs. A couple of them get released literally in a few weeks from now. Do you see any USP, anything? One is the point that Arvindji makes, that because there's so much data in the Indian context, their languages, they can be useful there. Do you see anything which India can export and make of use to the rest of the world?
I would like to add to what Arvindji said. There are 2 points here. First point is about the size of the model, which is required for 95% of the work. Our models, which are built by the 12 startups that we have funded and supported, and one of the IITs which have supported, are good for practically every application that we need in our country. I wouldn't take any names, but I can tell you in full confidence that during one major defense scenario in our country in the recent times, the sovereign model used in developed in our country used in that particular operation, the results it produced was phenomenal. Phenomenal, I'm saying. So, if that is the condition, if that is the scenario that we have experienced so far, the idea of having, as Arvindji said, the trillion parameter models will become commoditized. What is important is have those bouquet of smaller models which are very focused, very solution specific, sector specific, and start using them so that the productivity gains start coming in the economy. And that's what our focus is. The second part is about the innovations which are going